Lake Tahoe's water level has been dropping gradually, especially in the last couple of days with all the heat we've been getting. As Paul Nelson explains, this year had the lowest rise in water levels in Lake Tahoe's recorded history.
Tourists standing along the shoreline at Lake Tahoe usually see the same thing.
We get more than 15 million visitors a year to Lake Tahoe.
Clear blue water stretching toward the Nevada mountains and crowds gathered at places like Emerald Bay. However, what most people never think about is what lies beneath all of that water. Recently, divers have discovered objects so disturbing that even they struggled to explain what they were seeing. Some were terrifying, while others raised unexpected questions about the lake. What are these mysterious objects beneath the surface, and why are they sparking fear?
Today they were taking Petley out on a bit of an amateur research mission to see what lies beneath.
Stay tuned as we uncover the shocking secrets hidden deep beneath Lake Tahoe. What divers found in Lake Tahoe? The strangest things divers found in Lake Tahoe are old wooden boats resting silently at the bottom of the lake. Some of them date back decades, possibly even earlier than that, and many remain surprisingly preserved because of Tahoe's freezing temperatures. Divers exploring near older marina areas around South Lake Tahoe and Tahoe City have described seeing entire hulls sitting upright in the darkness as though somebody parked them there and never came back.
Tonight we are learning the body pulled from Lake Tahoe earlier today is that of 25-year-old Ian Morlang.
Deeper down the lake, the divers noticed something that changed the entire picture. The cold water slows decay so heavily that parts of the wood still remain intact long after they should have collapsed completely. Some boats still have visible seating frames and steering components attached. What makes it more unsettling is how suddenly they appear out of the darkness once a diver's flashlight reaches them. One moment there is nothing but black water, and then suddenly an entire forgotten vessel is sitting there. But old boats were only the beginning of what started turning up beneath the lake. Divers eventually began locating abandoned sedans and trucks scattered near older shoreline access routes. Some of the vehicles were believed to have rolled into the water accidentally during harsh winter conditions, while others raised far more questions. Lake Tahoe has steep roads surrounding parts of the shoreline, especially near areas along Highway 89 and older mountain routes where snow and ice once made driving extremely dangerous.
Highway Patrol in South Lake Tahoe is helping drivers prepare for the winter season.
Vintage sedans with shattered windows and rusted utility trucks have been discovered sitting deep underwater with silt packed into their interiors. Some no longer resemble vehicles at all until light reflects off a piece of chrome or a damaged wheel rim. Recovery teams have removed several over the years, but many are still believed to remain below. The lake is simply too large, too deep, and in some places too dangerous to fully search. Yet vehicles were not the only industrial-looking objects sitting on the lake floor. Reports from cleanup divers and environmental survey crews also mentioned rusted industrial drums lying in deeper sections of Tahoe.
Divers and volunteers have pulled more than 12 tons of trash out of Lake Tahoe.
Large metal barrels covered in corrosion were discovered far from busy tourist areas, especially in darker regions where visibility drops heavily. Nobody can always say exactly when they were dumped there or what they once contained. Some investigators suspected old construction waste, while others believed they may have come from industrial operations decades ago when environmental regulations were far weaker than they are today. What disturbed divers was not just the existence of the drums, but the number of them found scattered across separate underwater zones. Some were half buried in lake sediment, while others rested against underwater rock formations as though they had rolled there over time. But the deeper divers pushed into Tahoe's underwater terrain, the more signs they found showing how much human activity had been lost beneath the surface. Storms over the years also dragged huge amounts of dock equipment into the lake. Divers working near old marina locations recovered broken anchors, chains, wooden dock sections, and twisted metal hardware that had snapped loose during violent weather. Winter storms around Lake Tahoe are capable of producing waves strong enough to destroy shoreline structures completely. Pieces of older marina equipment now sit underwater covered in algae and silt, while fish swim through them like artificial reefs. In some places near older construction zones, divers found piles of damaged dock materials stacked almost on top of each other after decades of storms pushed debris across the lake floor. But scattered wreckage was still far easier to explain than what divers kept finding tangled around rocky underwater areas. Fishing nets and abandoned lines became another major discovery beneath the lake. Recreational fishing has existed at Tahoe for generations, especially around rocky drop-offs and deeper underwater shelves where trout gather.
Originally in Lake Tahoe, we had 7 native species of fish. Today we see 6 of those species that still reside here, but there are many more non-native fishes that actually live here.
Over time, enormous amounts of line, hooks, and damaged netting accumulated underwater. Divers described finding tangled masses wrapped around submerged rocks and tree remains, some stretched so tightly across certain areas that they created hazards for both wildlife and divers themselves. Old hooks still attached to faded fishing lines remain buried in sediment long after the people who dropped them have disappeared from the lake entirely. What began as ordinary fishing trips years ago slowly turned parts of Tahoe's underwater terrain into traps of forgotten equipment. Yet even stranger discoveries started appearing once divers began digging beneath the sediment itself. Divers have described uncovering large metal objects that looked almost fused into the lake floor itself. Tourists lose things in Lake Tahoe constantly, and divers recover those belongings every year. Phones, watches, sunglasses, jewelry, wallets, and even wedding rings have all been pulled from the lake floor.
This couple on a cold afternoon in Lake Tahoe. Came time to exchange rings. The groom fumbled, dropping the bride's ring through a gap in the pier.
Areas near Sand Harbor and Emerald Bay are especially known for lost personal items because of heavy swimming and boating traffic during summer months. Some recovery divers actually specialize in searching for valuables dropped by visitors. Yet not everything recovered carries a happy ending. Certain belongings remain underwater because nobody ever came back to claim them. A watch sitting alone in the sand or a pair of sunglasses buried near a rock formation can make divers wonder how long those objects have been waiting there unnoticed. Divers also located submerged road debris near older transportation routes surrounding Tahoe. Pieces of broken guardrails, damaged concrete barriers, and chunks of roadside material have been identified underwater close to steep highway sections. Decades of erosion, storms, vehicle accidents, and construction projects slowly pushed parts of the surrounding infrastructure into the lake itself. Some divers described finding concrete blocks resting at strange angles deep underwater, looking almost like the remains of a collapsed structure. What makes Lake Tahoe especially unsettling is how quickly ordinary objects disappear once they sink below the surface. The lake's famous clarity works against depth perception, meaning objects can vanish into darkness far sooner than people expect. That same darkness also preserved discoveries from much earlier decades. Historic bottles and storage containers have been recovered from both shallow and deep areas around Tahoe. Old glass bottles, rusted cans, and antique containers from earlier periods remain preserved far longer because of the lake's cold temperatures. Some divers searching near older recreational zones found bottles with labels still partially visible beneath layers of algae. Others recovered containers believed to date back generations, possibly tied to old lakeside resorts and businesses that operated before modern tourism transformed the area. Despite the strange things divers keep finding in Lake Tahoe, that's not the only reason the lake has stayed so interesting over the years. There is something else, something many people don't even know about. Under its calm surface, there is a rare and unusual sight that few have ever seen clearly. Let's look at some of these surprising features. Interesting facts about Lake Tahoe. People usually talk about Lake Tahoe like it is some peaceful mountain escape, sitting quietly between California and Nevada. Travel advertisements show the same thing every year: crystal blue water.
Mid-80s, crystal blue water, family here, the wind in your face. There's nothing better than Lake Tahoe.
Ski resorts covered in snow, boats floating through Emerald Bay while tourists stand along the shoreline taking photographs. What most people never stop to think about is how unusual the lake actually is. Tahoe is not simply beautiful. It is one of the strangest and most powerful natural lakes in North America, built by violent geological forces, surrounded by dangerous mountain weather, and deep enough to hide entire sections of itself in permanent darkness. The surface gives tourists one version of the story. The lake itself tells another. One of the first things many people do not realize is that Lake Tahoe is considered the largest alpine lake in North America. Sitting more than 6,200 feet above sea level inside the Sierra Nevada mountain range, the lake stretches across an enormous basin surrounded by steep peaks and thick forests. Most alpine lakes are small and isolated high in the mountains. Tahoe is different. It covers roughly 191 square miles, making it feel less like a mountain lake and more like an inland sea trapped between granite mountains. Driving around the shoreline alone can take hours depending on weather and traffic. Places like South Lake Tahoe, Incline Village, Tahoe City, and State Line all sit around a body of water large enough to completely change the climate of the surrounding region. But Tahoe's size is only part of what makes it unsettling to scientists and divers alike. The real shock begins once people understand how deep it actually goes. Lake Tahoe reaches depths of around 1,645 feet, making it one of the deepest freshwater lakes in the United States. Only Oregon's Crater Lake is deeper in the country. To put that into perspective, Tahoe is deeper than many skyscrapers are tall. The lake floor drops sharply in certain sections, especially toward the central basin, where underwater cliffs disappear into darkness. Divers have repeatedly described the experience of descending into Tahoe as psychologically disturbing because the bottom seems to vanish beneath them faster than expected. Yet depth alone does not explain why Tahoe looks so different from other lakes across America. There is something more fascinating. The water itself is unusually clear. On calm days, visibility can extend more than 60 feet beneath the surface, though clarity levels have fluctuated over the years because of pollution and development around the basin. Early researchers once reported visibility reaching close to 100 feet before heavy tourism and environmental changes began affecting the lake. Standing near the shoreline in places like D.L. Bliss State Park, people can sometimes see rocks and submerged logs sitting far below the surface, almost as if the water barely exists. The reason Tahoe looks this way has a lot to do with the surrounding granite landscape, which releases very little nutrient-rich soil into the water. Lakes with heavy nutrient runoff usually become cloudy because algae grow more easily. Tahoe's basin behaves differently. The water stays cleaner because the surrounding geology naturally filters what enters the lake. But that same clarity also creates a false sense of safety. Beneath the surface, Lake Tahoe stays dangerously cold throughout the entire year. Surface temperatures rise during summer months, especially near shallow beaches, but deeper sections remain near freezing no matter what season it is. The lake's depth allows cold water to stay trapped below the upper layers, creating conditions that preserve objects and reduce decomposition underwater. Divers entering deeper zones near Rubicon Point or Emerald Bay describe a sudden temperature drop that feels almost unnatural once they descend past the warmer surface layers. Even experienced swimmers underestimate Tahoe because the lake looks calm and inviting from above. Every year, people are caught off guard by how quickly cold water drains energy from the body. Sunlight itself cannot reach the deepest parts of Lake Tahoe. Once depth increases beyond a certain point, the lower basin remains in complete darkness permanently. No natural light reaches those underwater regions at all. Scientists using remotely operated vehicles to study the lake floor described enormous black spaces where visibility depends entirely on artificial lighting. The deeper sections behave more like an underwater cavern system than an ordinary lake. This darkness is part of what fuels so many rumors surrounding Tahoe over the years, especially stories involving missing objects and unexplained underwater discoveries. Most of those stories have ordinary explanations attached to them eventually, but the lake's extreme depth and darkness make speculation almost impossible to avoid. The basin itself was formed through forces violent enough to reshape entire sections of the western United States. Lake Tahoe exists because of geological faults that took place millions of years ago. Powerful shifts in the Earth's crust created the Tahoe Basin, while volcanic activity and erosion slowly shaped the surrounding landscape into what exists today. The Sierra Nevada mountains themselves were lifted and altered through tectonic movement over enormous stretches of time. Scientists believe the basin began forming roughly 2 to 3 million years ago, long before modern forests, ski resorts, or highways surrounded the shoreline. What tourists now experience as peaceful scenery was originally built through earthquakes, volcanic events, and massive geological pressure. The Sierra Nevada mountains heavily control Tahoe's climate. Storm systems moving inland from the Pacific Ocean collide with the mountain range, forcing moisture upward where it cools and falls as snow. That process creates some of the heaviest snowfall totals anywhere in the United States during strong winter seasons. Ski resorts around Heavenly, Squaw Valley, now known as Palisades Tahoe, and North Star depend entirely on this mountain weather cycle. Yet the same storms that attract winter tourists can quickly become life-threatening. Blizzards regularly shut down roads surrounding the lake, especially along Interstate 80 and Highway 50. Whiteout conditions have stranded drivers for hours during major storms. Residents living near Tahoe understand that weather can shift violently within a single afternoon. Calm skies over the lake can turn into snow, high winds, and dangerous visibility with very little warning. Snowfall around Lake Tahoe can become enormous during strong winters. Certain storms have dumped multiple feet of snow within days across the basin. Mountain communities surrounding the lake sometimes record seasonal snowfall totals exceeding several hundred inches. Snowpack in the Sierra Nevada also plays a major role in California's water supply because melting snow eventually feeds reservoirs and river systems farther south. During drought years, concern around Tahoe increases because reduced snowfall affects both water levels and tourism revenue. Ski resorts suffer financially when winters become too dry, but excessive snowfall creates a different set of problems entirely, including avalanches, road collapses, and severe flooding during rapid spring melts. Tahoe exists inside a constant cycle where weather controls nearly everything around it. The lake itself stores an almost unimaginable amount of fresh water caught in the middle of all this mountain instability. Lake Tahoe holds roughly 39 trillion gallons of water inside its basin. That amount is difficult for most people to even visualize properly. Scientists estimate that if the water were drained completely, it could cover the entire state of California in several inches of water. About 63 streams flow into Tahoe, while only the Truckee River carries water back out toward Nevada. The lake behaves almost like a giant natural storage tank sitting high in the mountains. Yet despite containing such an enormous volume of water, Tahoe's shoreline changes constantly depending on drought conditions, snowmelt, and seasonal weather cycles. When you imagine the unique features of Tahoe, it might feel like the lake is already strange enough on its own. But there is also a deeper historical side you should know about. Lake Tahoe played a small but interesting role during major historical periods, including World War II. Let's take a quick look at how that history unfolded. The Untold World War II History of Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe has always been a quiet escape. Snow on the mountains, blue water, casinos glowing at night on the Nevada side, but what gets ignored is how much of its modern identity was shaped during and after World War II. The war did not happen in Tahoe, not directly, but it changed everything around it. During the war years, the mountainous terrain around Lake Tahoe became useful in ways most people never really talk about. The Sierra Nevada range, with its cold winters and steep elevation, offered conditions similar to what soldiers might face in European mountain regions. Military training exercises were carried out in nearby areas across California's high country, where troops were exposed to survival conditions, cold weather movement, and rugged terrain navigation. The region was not a battlefield, but it became part of the preparation ground for soldiers who would later be sent overseas. The landscape around Tahoe, with its snow-heavy winters and isolated forests, gave instructors a natural environment that could not be easily replicated elsewhere. Yet while soldiers trained in nearby mountains, something else was happening that would permanently reshape the lake itself. Transportation routes began expanding during and after the war. Highways like United States, Route 50 and sections leading toward what is now Interstate 80 became more reliable, allowing faster movement between California and Nevada. What was once a remote mountain destination slowly became reachable to middle-class families driving from Sacramento, Reno, and the Bay Area. And once the roads opened, everything else began to change. Returning soldiers played a role that is often overlooked in Tahoe's post-war transformation. Many servicemen who had passed through or trained in the Sierra Nevada during wartime later returned to the same region for vacations or permanent relocation. The lake had left an impression on them not because of luxury or entertainment, but because of its isolation and calm compared to what they had experienced during war. Some came back with their families, others came back with savings from military service benefits, using that money to buy land or start small businesses around the basin. Their return helped fuel the early wave of tourism growth that would define Tahoe for decades. But they were not the only force driving change. The entire American economy was shifting at the same time. After World War II ended in 1945, the United States entered a period of rapid economic expansion. Industrial production had surged during the war, and that momentum carried into civilian life. Families had more disposable income, car ownership increased, and travel became more common. Lake Tahoe, sitting between California and Nevada, became an easy destination for this new traveling public. The combination of improved roads and rising incomes meant that places once considered remote suddenly became weekend getaways. Tahoe was no exception, and on the Nevada side, something far more aggressive was already taking shape. Gambling laws in Nevada created a unique economic advantage that would define Lake Tahoe's future. While most states restricted or heavily regulated casino gambling, Nevada legalized it, and that decision changed everything for the region. On the south shore of Tahoe, particularly around State Line, casinos began appearing as early as the late 1940s. Investors saw opportunity in combining mountain scenery with legalized gambling. The idea was simple but powerful. People could ski during the day, gamble at night, and stay in luxury resorts surrounded by alpine views. This combination attracted visitors not just from nearby states, but from across the country. Entertainment figures and business investors began paying attention. And when money entered the system, development followed quickly. Luxury resorts expanded rapidly during the late 1940s and 1950s. What started as small lodges and roadside cabins turned into large hotel-casino complexes designed to attract wealthy tourists and high rollers. Places like Harrah's Lake Tahoe and other casino resorts on the Nevada side became central to the region's identity. The architecture changed the shoreline. Lights, buildings, parking structures, and entertainment venues began replacing the quieter landscape that once defined the lake. The transformation was not subtle. It was fast, loud, and heavily driven by competition between developers trying to capture a growing tourist market. But behind this rapid growth, something else was happening that would permanently reshape the communities around the lake. Permanent settlements began forming where seasonal vacation cabins once stood. Small communities that were originally designed for summer visitors slowly turned into year-round towns. South Lake Tahoe, Tahoe City, Incline Village, and other surrounding areas started developing infrastructure to support permanent residents. Building businesses thrived during this period. Contractors, engineers, carpenters, and suppliers all found steady work as hotels, roads, homes, and entertainment facilities were built across the basin. The demand for labor was constant. New resorts required expansion. For many workers in Nevada and California, Tahoe represented steady income in an otherwise unpredictable post-war economy. Alongside this growth came another layer that shaped Tahoe's culture in a very different way. Entertainment became one of the strongest forces in the region. Casino culture in Nevada brought music performances, stage shows, and celebrity appearances to Lake Tahoe on a regular basis. Big names from Las Vegas and Hollywood began performing in Tahoe resorts. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and other entertainers associated with the Rat Pack era were known to appear in Nevada casinos, helping build an image of Tahoe as a glamorous destination. Nightlife became just as important as skiing or boating. The lake was no longer just about nature. It was becoming part of America's entertainment circuit. But behind the glamour, there were darker conversations that sometimes followed the money. Local stories and historical accounts have long suggested that organized crime had some level of involvement in early casino operations around Nevada, including areas near Lake Tahoe. While not every claim is verified and many remain part of broader American casino history narratives, it is widely acknowledged that the mid-20th century gambling industry in Nevada attracted a mix of legitimate investors and questionable figures. Casinos required large amounts of cash flow, and in that environment, control and influence often became complicated. Law enforcement and regulatory systems at the time were not as strict or as coordinated as they are today, which allowed certain operations to grow quickly before oversight caught up. Over time, increased government regulation reduced much of that influence, but the stories remain part of Tahoe's historical background. Lake Tahoe is often associated with its mysteries, but beyond that, it is also deeply tied to one of the most fascinating chapters in American entertainment and casino history. What other mysteries and fascinating stories have you heard about Lake Tahoe? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen and you will enjoy it.